Okay, let's unpack this. So I want you to picture this. We're on this long, empty rural road, Highway 42. It's basically just a ribbon of asphalt cutting through miles and miles of farmland, connecting Dalton County and Pine Ridge. Usually it's the definition of routine, which is, ooh, it's exactly what makes what happened there so jarring.
And that contrast is everything, This deep dive isn't about some big city firefight. This was a state operation in the absolute middle of nowhere that just exploded. It became one of the most violent law enforcement encounters this state has seen in decades, all on the night of August 11, 2019.
So our mission here is to get past the headline of successful bust. We're going to break down the critical facts. We're talking about the planning, the insane tactical choices they had to make, and the environmental challenges, and of course, how a planned stop escalated into just utter chaos.
To really get the stakes, you have to start with the target, Russell Kane. The reports paint a very clear picture. He's a career criminal, seasoned, focused on armed robbery, and more recently, illegal weapons trafficking.
A major player, then.
Oh, absolutely. For months, a federal task force had been hearing whispers about a massive gun smuggling ring. And, all the intel just kept pointing back to Kane.
But there was something specific about him in the briefings, right? He wasn't just some supplier.
That's right. The sources describe him as, well, pragmatic, yes, but also just ruthless. Incredibly volatile. He was never afraid of a confrontation, and he was known to be armed to the teeth always. And that volatility is what forced the task force's hand. They had to move.
Right. So that takes us from months of just watching and waiting to immediate action. The pre-ambush phase, where did the break come from?
It came from a person. A very frightened informant.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And this individual gave them the one thing they'd been missing, the concrete plan. Kane was personally going to move a huge shipment of stolen military-grade rifles, and he was going to use that desolate stretch of Highway 42 to do it.
And the timing. The informant gave them the timing.
Exactly. Kane was planning to use an approaching storm as cover.
So how does the task force go from just watching to what they call kinetic action with that clock ticking down?
Kinetic action is just. It's the term for physically engaging the target, and it meant their window for a clean, simple arrest was pretty much gone. They had this huge strategic dilemma, an ambush on a rural highway against a guy like Kane. It's incredibly dangerous for the agents.
The alternative was worse.
Catastrophic. The reports are very clear on this. They couldn't just let that shipment go, try to track it later.
Why not? I mean, why was that the worst option?
Because we're talking about dozens of high-powered stolen rifles. Military grade or close to it. If that cash hit the black market, you're arming criminal groups across several states. You're fueling violence for years to come. The long-term risk to the public was just. It was way higher than the immediate risk to the agents.
And on top of all that operational risk, you have the one thing Kane was counting on. The weather.
The storm was a huge factor. It had been building all afternoon. By the time the team was deploying, the sky was just black. The rain started coming down, and by the time of the ambush, it was a sheet. Visibility dropped to almost nothing.
Which has to be just as bad for the agents as it is for Kane, right? How did they even set up in that?
Extreme discipline. That's the key difference we'll get into. They were out there hours ahead of time, unmarked SUVs, hidden in these deep roadside ditches, agents in full tactical gear, just waiting, in silence. Radio chatter was at a minimum. They were using thermal imaging, but even that was getting distorted by the heavy rain. Just eyes on the highway waiting.
So after all that waiting, all that tension, the moment of contact, how does it actually go down?
It ends at exactly 9:01 p.m.
Just like that?
Yep. A pair of headlights finally cuts through the rain, and then the convoy appears. A black pickup truck in the lead. Then a second one. Then a third. 3 vehicles.
That's interesting. 3 vehicles feels almost small for what they were expecting, doesn't it?
It did. For a second, there was concern. Maybe he got tipped off. Maybe this is just a decoy run.
But they confirmed it.
Instantly. As the trucks entered the designated kill zone, the surveillance team got a positive ID on the license plate of the lead truck. Russell Kane himself was behind the wheel. The operation was a go.
And what was the order, the explicit command right at that moment?
It was repeated across the line, very quietly. Do not fire unless fired upon. And then they hit the lights. The emergency lights flash on. They block the highway, box in the trucks in. These high-intensity spotlights just slice through the rain and pin the convoy down.
And for a second, it's just quiet.
Almost unbearable, according to the reports. Just the sound of the rain and the engines idling.
And then it all falls apart because of Kane.
It's the trigger. It all happens in seconds. Agents are screaming commands, show me your hands, get out of the vehicle. Kane doesn't comply. He just opens his door, steps out into the storm, and stares them down.
Doesn't raise his hands.
No. Instead, they see him move back toward the cab of his truck, reaching for something behind his seat.
And that's it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Before anyone could even move to tackle him, the first gunshot cracks through the storm. That one shot from Kane just obliterates the plan. Agents dive for cover.
And the whole thing just erupts.
From zero to a full-on firefight in less than 3 seconds. Bullets are just tearing across the asphalt. 2 of Kane's guys jump out of the second truck and they just start firing wildly into the darkness. It was disorienting chaos.
The reports mention the lightning, right?
Yeah, for split seconds, a lightning flash would just illuminate the whole scene, turning Highway 42 into this terrifying floodlit battlefield.
And the task force realizes pretty quickly that they're seriously outgunned. You mentioned modified rifles, ballistic plates.
Right. This tells you everything. They weren't prepared to surrender. They were prepared for war. The modified rifles mean they could sustain heavy, rapid fire, high-capacity magazines.
And the ballistic plates? What does that mean exactly?
It means they were wearing body armor that could stop rifle rounds, not just handgun rounds. They came expecting a shootout, a siege. They thought their gear gave them the edge.
So that brings us to the core question of this whole deep dive then. If they had superior firepower, superior protection, why were they neutralized so fast?
One word: coordination, or the complete lack of it.
So hardware versus training.
Exactly. The task force had training. They knew how to lay down suppressive fire, how to communicate, how to use cover, even in that storm. Kane's crew, they just had they're firing wildly. The 2 guys in the second truck. They immediately broke formation. They didn't try to flank or set up crossfire. They just shot at whatever was right in front of them. It was pure adrenaline, not strategy.
And that made all the difference.
A huge difference. Within minutes, it was over for them. The storm, the shock of the ambush, the agents exploited that chaos. One of Kane's men went down fast. The second guy, he surrendered almost immediately after a round, shattered his windshield. His confidence just gone.
So the main firefight is over in minutes. But Kane himself, he gets away at first.
That's right. He doesn't go down with his men. He's wounded in that first exchange, but he makes a last desperate run for it, plunges right into the drenched, muddy fields next to the highway.
And now they have to chase a wounded, armed man in the dark, in the mud.
It's a logistical nightmare. They're running blind, relying on their radios and flashes of light. They chased him for hundreds of yards before finally cornering him near a barbed wire fence.
And even then,
bleeding, exhausted, he refused to drop his weapon, refused the final order to surrender.
The standoff ended with a single shot. Kane survived, barely, but the operation was over.
And the results just stunned the state. I mean, for a firefight that lasted maybe 6 minutes total, they recovered over 40 stolen firearms. 40. Many of them high-capacity rifles. 3 agents were injured, but a huge criminal operation was just dismantled in one night.
So what does this all mean when you step back and look at the big picture?
It means Highway 42 became infamous. That quiet road, a symbol of agriculture, suddenly it symbolized the thin line between a routine patrol and life-or-death combat.
It proved these operations aren't just happening in big cities.
Exactly. They exploit these quiet arteries. And it forced a major reevaluation of tactics. The need for specialized training against armored suspects, the need for gear that can defeat ballistic plates from the start. It all came from this night.
And that memory has stuck. It's wild how the local lore grabs onto these things. People who live there say that to this day, whenever a bad storm rolls in over that highway, they remember. They remember the lightning flashes and the sound of gunfire cutting through the rain.
They remember the moment the law caught up.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? It shows that a crew that relies on being ruthless and having better guns can still fail. They failed because they didn't have the discipline when the pressure was on. All those months of intel work came down to just a few minutes of violent, uncoordinated chaos. They thought they could outgun the law. They were wrong.
And you have to go back to the very beginning, to that one informant.
That's the final thought you should really consider. That one person's choice to speak up determined everything. The time, the place. It allowed the task force to choose the battlefield. An isolated road instead of, say, a crowded town square. That one act of courage was the most effective weapon in the entire operation, worth more than all the armor and all the rifles in Russell Kane's trucks.